Hello everyone, and finally I'm back at my home. I'm going to upload a video, and in today's video we are going to discuss a very interesting variation in the London system and name this variation as the crazy London because this variation is actually very uncommon. Not actually many players don't know this variation in the higher level as well because it is such crazy variation. It makes it so interesting actually. Yeah, and actually this actually happened in my game because I actually prepared it because I knew that my opponent is going to play the London system. And yeah, I was not able to upload any chess content because I was playing a chess tournament. It was two chess tournaments consisting of 15 days, and I was out of my hometown. And yeah, this was the ninth round, and in the previous 8 rounds, I won 4 rounds and I drew 4 rounds. So yeah, like the Anishgiri of the tournament, taking 4 draws, actually come in straight. And now this is the ninth round. Yeah, and my opponent is having the rating of like around 1700 and I'm like 1600. Yeah, so let's check it out what happened in the game. So my opponent with the white pieces. Actually, this video is going to be completely awesome for everyone who plays the London system, or yeah, actually for those who plays the London system. And actually this is a variation which many London players should know, and this variation can also played from the black side if white enters in the variation. Let's check it out, you will understand. So my opponent basically starts out the game with 1d4, and I replied with my for knight to f6. If he goes for c4, I can go for playing e6 g5, and now there are many variations you can say. But he played bishop f4, and I just simply prepared it before like the 10 minutes remaining from the start of the tournament of the ninth round. I played d5, e3, and I played c5. This is my common way of replying in the London system because there is some variation, although everyone knows it. There's something like c3, we play knight c6, knight f3, bishop f5, knight to d2, and we play queen b6 generally, hitting the pawn on b2, and white tries to protect it by playing queen to b3, and we play c4, hitting the queen, and after a queen trade, you say I've already made a video on it where simply black is actually very comfortable. e6, b5, b4, and black simply destroys white position. So this is my general plan, although everybody knows it. But we can actually have a completely fine position of developing our knight to c6, bishop f5, e6, not going queen b6, but we can simply develop with bishop e7 castle. And we are actually better in this position, already equalized. Yeah, because you can see from the start of the position, white is having a small edge. But in the London, that is the reason many players don't go for playing the London system. It equalizes the position, but although losing in the London system is very hard because white is having a simple plan, not a complicated position. Best opening for all positional players. It requires a great positional understanding, and it actually increases our positional understanding, resourcefulness, and everything. So a very great opening from the white side as well. Even Magnus Carlsen plays it. So after c5, as we know that black already have an edge. My opponent came out in the blue of capturing the pawn on c5, which is not so popular. Everybody tries to play c3, keeping the center. Captured the pawn, and I played e6. I'm directly going for the pawn on c5, and he tries to defend it with b4. If you try to play anything like knight to c3, you have already given me an upper hand. I can simply go for capturing the pawn. I can play knight c6, and I am already having a complete control in the center because you are not having the pawn on d4 to cover the e5 square. So I'm having complete center. I've already traded your center pawn with my side pawn. So I'm already better. I'm already having an edge with the black pieces actually. He played b4, the only option to defend the pawn. So his plan is, if I was able to regain my the lost pawn, because I'm a pawn down in the position, then I'm better. But if I'm not able to regain this pawn, then he's a pawn up. which is going to cause me a lot more trouble in the end game part. So after b4, I simply strike with a4, a5, going for the pawn on b4. c3, you can't play a3 because I can capture. A takes cannot be possible because the rook is hanging on a1. So c3, if I take, he takes, and he's having the completely fine position, no double pawns. So here I first played bishop to d7. Here the idea of playing bishop d7 is that there would be no light squares check to the black king that can come in the future, but I simply prevented it by first playing bishop d7. And he played knight to d2, a very logical reply and the best move. He's first developing the queen side pieces so that in the later part, if the b pawn needs any kind of protection, he can go for playing something like queen b1, rook b1, trying to prevent the pawn, trying to give some support to the b or the c pawn. I captured, he captured, and I played b6, sacrificing another pawn. Although I'm regaining one pawn in the next move. Here, if it tries to defend the c pawn again, like queen c2, I can simply capture the pawn, and after take, I can play queen f5, and you see, I'm already hitting the pawn on c5, and the queen is already not in a good position. I can simply play bishop a4, hit the queen, and black is already receiving some tempos, and the queen on c2 is definitely not a nicely placed piece, and I've already recovered the pawn. You can't even move the rook. The a2 pawn is hanging, so everything is falling apart for white. So definitely giving support to the c5 pawn now is useless. So the only option is left is to capture the pawn on b6, which he played. And now the point is, which pawn should I capture? The b4 or the b6? I played bishop into b4, which is the right move, because after queen into b6, white can play a3 to defend the pawn, and here white is completely fine a pawn up. That is the reason I captured the pawn on b4. He played bishop to c7. Because my idea here is to simply capture the pawn on b6, and I'm completely fine. I'm better. His king is in the center. I can castle at any time because there are no pieces on the queen side. And I can actually play something like queen f5, putting more pressure on the knight, and because the knight is pinned. And actually putting more pressure on the a2 pawn as well in the future. Even with knight e4, perhaps. So bishop to c7. The queen is having only two options, queen c8 or the queen to e7. Queen c8 is not a good move because for now white can play rook to b1. You can't move the bishop because b7 is already very strong, hitting the queen and the rook. And black actually faces many troubles in the position. White is actually better. White can play rook c1 at some point, hitting some discoveries to the black king on c8. So basically I played queen to e7, which is a very interesting move and the best. He played b7, the most natural reply. And what is happening? Just see why I'm calling this variation as the crazy London. The rook is attacked, the knight is attacked. You have to move the rook. You are having no choice. But if you try to move the rook, the knight is hanging. I played rook to a3. And actually, after rook to a3, I was actually playing so fast because the other tables were seeing our game, and this position actually landed within 2 minutes. Because actually he knew the theory at a certain point, but at a certain point he simply forgot the opening. Everyone is thinking that I'm a piece down, he captured my knight, and everybody's thinking, what is black playing? Black is simply piece down. But as I'm playing so fast, everybody's completely sure. Yeah. Because you see, the tournament I played was open, but the side tables open, the players were having the rating of 1700, 1800 average. Yeah, they didn't know the lines. Yeah, that was the reason they were all shocked. After bishop into b8, I played bishop to a4. We are a piece down. He's already having a pawn on b7. He's a piece up. But my Two bishops are completely monsters, hitting the queen, hitting the knight. The king side pieces are not able to move at all. They're all stuck inside the cage. There is no hope for white to castle. It's completely crushing, yeah? But the engine says it's an equal position. There's only single move for white to keep the position equal, or else every other move gives complete advantage to black, like -3, -2, completely winning. In the game, after bishop a4, he thought for 10 minutes and he played queen to b1, which was a blunder. Now it's all over actually. The right move was to play bishop to e5. And after bishop e5, uh, first let's check out what's the correct line. Then first, okay, let's discuss the game. After bishop a4, he played queen b1. And here I simply captured the knight. King takes, knight check, king moves. And feel free to pause the video and try to find the finishing blow for black. It's black to play the move. After playing this move, your opponent is going to simply resign. Not going to resign, but going to play a couple of moves. But behind the idea, it's already game over after seeing this move. Feel free to pause the video and try to find the best move for black. Okay, it requires. Okay, I simply given you a hint of pausing the video. In the game, the position doesn't give you any hints. If you are able to find it, congratulations, still a very great job, yeah? You see, what is the idea of black? What does black wants to achieve? What black wants to achieve is, black wants to able to give rook to b, queen to, if black is able to give queen to b4 check, and if the queen is not able to capture the queen, then he has to move the king, like king to e2. Here I can simply go queen to d2 check, queen to f2, and it's already over. If I am able to execute the move queen to b4 check properly. So I played rook to b3. Oh, basically simply not allowing white to cover the square on b4. And that's rook b3. Everyone is shot. You can't capture the rook with the queen. It's checks, and I'm having two. He's having two pieces for the queen, but queen is completely winning. Everything is falling apart. The king side pieces have not been developed as well. It's already over. And if you capture with the pawn, queen b4 check, king move, queen check, king move, check, check, mate. Over. So he captured with the queen because he was having no choice actually. If he tries to move there is no space actually. What should I do? Like if queen c1 is coming up, it's queen b4 check. It's actually mating 15 very deep. King e2, rook b2 check, king goes, rook into, and actually everything is falling apart. You see already it's completely losing here. So yeah, he captured with the queen. He took, check, and the fun part is, and actually it shows a very nice gesture from him. He actually allowed me to mate him. That is the interesting thing. He actually allowed me to mate him. Yeah. So it was a very interesting game, and actually this game was actually of like half an hour, and the game is over. And it was a classical tournament of 90 minutes plus 30-second increment, which made this game so interesting. And actually, I simply crushed it. Yeah, it was all my preparation. The critical moment was when I need to find the rook to b3, which I actually able to find it. So impressed by me. And yeah. So now let's discuss where did white went wrong. Uh, so after bishop a4, the correct and the only move for white is to play bishop to e5. So what is happening in the position? White is saying you can go for capturing my queen, but I'm actually making a new queen on b8. So you are forced to capture the pawn on b7, because if you try to capture the queen on d1, then after b8 queen, now it's white who is completely winning. Because after queen d8, here queen into b4, the rook is hanging, the bishop is hanging, and everything is falling apart. That is why queen into b7 is the fourth move. And here, white is having the only move queen to b1 now. Now queen to b1 is right. After playing bishop to e5. And here black must play d4. What's the idea? Bishop into d4 is the fourth move. Actually, the basic idea of sacrificing this pawn is the position is equal, and idea of sacrificing the pawns is it opens up the black lines, and the white pieces on the king side is completely stuck. We can open up the position as much as we want, to sacrifice, but in the end, black is going to have a fine position. But we can simply make a draw by repeating the position because no piece is developed, you can see. Here the only move for white is to capture the pawn with the bishop, because in the next move the black idea is to simply capture the pawn and it's over. If you capture this pawn with the pawn, it's now winning for black because knight e4 is a powerful move hitting the knight. Only two moves, bishop f4, knight f3. If knight f3, rook f3. You see the power of rook on the third rank, and capturing the rook is the only move, or else there is nothing left. But here comes knight into knight. Queen is attacked. If you try to move the queen, knight takes pawn, it's a check. King move, knight takes bishop. If you take the knight, this is hanging. Actually, the queen is attacked, so if you take now bishop b5 and the queen is lost. You say everything is collapsing for white at every situation actually. If bishop f4 the right move, although it's still losing, we have e5. Beautiful. Hitting the pawn, hitting the bishop. If you try to take with the pawn, trying to still defend this knight, I'm having knight into knight, bishop into, king into, queen check. You see the idea of sacrificing both the pawns on e and the d file. Bishop comes, we have castle. And guess what? We are simply able to capture bishop anytime. If he tries to defend it like a knight e2, rook d8, our idea is like it's a triple attack. Moving the king would be simply lost. As we are able to regain the piece, it's completely losing. White has lost his castling right. Everything is falling apart. If he tries to defend with knight to c1, the last hope, defend the bishop to b5. Bringing the final piece, the four active pieces, all the pieces are looking at the bishop, it's over. You can't bring any another defender. Rook d1 takes, knight takes, rook takes, king takes, check, and comes with a final blow. Queen into rook. Simplifying the position, and in the end we had a rook up. Yep, that was the whole variation why white should not capture this pawn with the pawn, but with the bishop. And now comes another fantastic move. This is the reason I named it the Crazy London. e5. Sacrificing another pawn. The only move actually. Bishop into e5, or else, yeah, you can simply think that it is the only fourth move, or else we can capture the bishop. If bishop b2, it's losing because many players go for it. We can play bd2, king g2, knight e4 check, and it doesn't matter if here we have this check, if here we have queen a6 check, followed by this crazy variation, and it's almost a minute. So yeah. So bishop into d5, e5 is the only move. Bishop into check, king into, queen check, the only move. Bishop d4, only move. If you try to move the king, queen f5 check is coming up. If you try to move the king, here queen into e5, and here black is better in this position because first of all, the interesting thing is there is no white cannot give any checks to the black king because every pot is covered by the black pieces. The king have not castled yet. If we even try to play knight f3, I can play queen to d6, still covering the square, and on the next move I can castle. I can bring the rook into the game. It's over for white. That is why bishop to d4 the only move to protect the piece. I can give a check, king move. Now bishop to d1 check. Fantastic, right? Yeah, such an interesting game, yeah. Bishop to d1 check. You can also go for castling in this position. It leads to not the same variation, but still leads to the same result. Bishop d1 is interesting because we sacrifice the pieces, and sacrifice makes the game more interesting. Queen d1, queen check, king move, queen check, king move, queen check, and we can simply make a draw. There is nothing white can do. After queen before check, if you try to go over here, knights mate into, queen f5 check, king moves, and it's a mate. Yep, And if you try to capture with the king, now this is losing for white because knight c3 check, you can't capture the knight, it's the pin, and you can capture the queen on the next move. And here you can also go for castling, and after f3, you can give a check, takes, rook takes, and here black is already prepared to give a rook c2 check, and it's over. So white is forced to play king to f2, trying to develop another pieces, but queen check, it doesn't matter which piece comes, check, and white have to repeat the position. If white goes for playing something like this, knight's completely losing because of rook e8, and everything is falling apart. Rook check is coming up, it's over. That is why white is forced to repeat the position, and it's a draw. Very crazy variation actually. And actually, many players don't know this variation because this variation is so crazy. You see, you sacrifice you sacrifice a knight to gather activity. Then you play bishop. Then you see a move like bishop e5. You go for capturing the pawn. Then you go for capturing 2 pawns, and in the end, you get a draw. And actually, this variation is so complicated that even one move wrong from any side, the position is going to completely collapse for them. And yeah, actually, this is a very interesting variation for white side. Actually, if you know the theory that if you know the best move for white to how to defend from the white side, from white pieces, then you can definitely go for actually capturing the pawn on c5. Because in the end, if you are able to keep the pawn, you are going to win the game. And actually, there are 90% of the players who have watched Eric Rosen's video, because Eric Rosen's made a video in which he basically showed this idea of developing the pawn on d5 c5, and of this variation of basically c3. Yeah, of basically this variation. Although this was a game. But yeah, there are like 90%, 95% of the players always go for this variation, in which white basically continues with c3 because this is the standard way of playing the London. But capturing the pawn makes the game interesting. And if you know this theory, this complicated theory, and actually this is the best variation for black, in which black can able to equalize the position or able to mix the position if they are complicated. If they like to play the sacrificing chess, they can go for it. But if you know this line from the white side completely, then in the worst scenario, you can draw the game. Or if your opponent doesn't know this theory, which is too complicated, you can actually win the game because you are able to gain the pawn. And in any other variation, I don't think black can regain the pawn in the best way. So yeah, a very interesting game. I personally think I played, and actually a very interesting variation. So I named this. Variation as the Crazy London. You can also name this as in this variation as anything else, but I like to keep this as the Crazy London. So if you like this variation and if you like my game, then make sure to like the video, share this video with everyone because this variation is so interesting, and make sure to share this video with your friends who like to play the London system, or whoever who plays this system against the London system and says that London is a bad opening. You can go for capturing the pawn and tell them, just tell me how will you able to regain the pawn. So yeah, I'm going to come up with these interesting videos like this. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching One Shot Chess.